Good morning. Welcome to Breakthrough Academy. A nice chilly Friday morning for us. And I'm wearing more layers today than I was last week.
Yeah, we've entered into winter.
We've entered into winter. Has anyone noticed in the last week or two that it has been cold? Maybe your car in the morning has been frosty on the outside. But we are excited to be in this more warm building than that. We're excited for today, for continuing. Obviously, we weren't here last week because of the Reverend Jesse's meeting, Jesse Duplantis meetings that we were preparing for. So we're excited to be back. We're looking forward to what God has today. We're going to continue in today. We're here with Pastor Peter and myself. Jay will be with us momentarily.
Yeah, he's just doing some tech stuff for us on the side.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jay. We appreciate you doing that. And I'm here with I have an amazing wife.
So does Jay.
He doesn't have an amazing wife. He has an amazing
I said
mother.
that at the right time.
Amazing wife, amazing mother, right? Hallelujah.
It looks good.
Yeah, it's going to be good and healthy.
Is that the same one that was last time?
No, they're always a bit different.
Okay,
they're sort of just whatever fruit and veggies we've got. Not veggies. Do we put any veggies in there? I don't know. There's a lot of fruit.
There's probably some greens that you put in to make it.
But anyway, people are not here to see my smoothie. They're here to hear the word of God. That's my understanding.
That's it.
And we're pretty excited by what we're going to do today. We've been working through the book of Acts because Acts is like a framework, and then so much of what God was doing in the early church and through the Apostle Paul is seen that. But it also touches on things that then in our New Testament writings, so many of the letters that we have, we find out where that church was, details of that. Not always. We don't have all the details we have. The book of Rome, the book to the Romans. Paul didn't go to Rome till right to the end. But we know a little bit, and we see a little bit about what God's doing and who He's writing to. And so we stopped and we parked a little while at Galatians, the very first letter that Paul wrote.
The foolish Galatians.
Oh, you idiots. And you see how Paul did not sit down and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write letters of biblical instruction to the churches. They were because he was exasperated, or he was upset, or there was something that he needed to address. So many times they were written out of a sense of how can I get to you guys? How do I teach you guys? And he couldn't say, let's jump on Skype. Let's do a Zoom. Let's do people Skype still?
I don't think so.
Yeah, let's have to get that word out of my vocabulary because I think it's gone now. I don't think people don't Skype.
The idea's the same.
There's Zoom, and even Zoom. Like let's do a Google Meet. Is that right? I'm trying to use all the correct terms. Let's FaceTime. Let's do something where we can talk. It's just not available. In fact, I was reading a commentary this morning on Thessalonians, which I'll explain why in a minute. But they were saying how they think it's very hard for people in the commentary, the guy Gordon Fee's from North America, he said for North American young people to understand and get in the mind of Paul because the sense of distance just isn't there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You go to somewhere, you do something, you move away in a few months, you're wondering what's happened, you're not getting a report here, a report there. Whereas he said, our kids grow up, they leave for college, and it's like they've never left because they're constantly in contact. They can, whether it's texting, emailing, but now live chats. You can go and say hello to the dog every morning. You can, you don't
the important things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's hard for us in our culture to get it in our head sometimes when doing that. I mentioned this to Brooke while I was having breakfast, and she goes, our best equivalent is probably, I went camping and I had no coverage for 3 days. That's about, we were driving to Sydney and we're 2 hours where we couldn't get any coverage.
True,
I couldn't get any updates on my phone for 2 hours. I felt so isolated. And that's really, you take someone where they can't get coverage, they go into an underground car park and it's like, I'm here for 15 minutes, but
I feel like I've just stepped back in time 20 years.
Yeah, I've lost touch with the world. What do I do? And but I'm saying that because a lot of what happens in the New Testament is born out of the sense of distance and that space that Paul he doesn't have easy access. He can't jump on a plane and be somewhere. in the next couple of days. You know, you take any key minister here. If there's some church that he's connected with that has some great tragedy strike, they can be there usually within 48 hours. They, you know, anywhere in the world they can often be there within 30, you know, within 3 days. But often they can be within a day. They can be down there, hugging them, speaking to the church, preaching, doing everything that to put things right, correct something. You know, there's a big fracture happens. You can have people there overnight, and they can be speaking to the church, or they can be live stream on the on the big screen within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm speaking to this. So we've got to try and understand that our whole approach is accessibility is easy. Jay, come and jump down.
Sit down, Jay.
See you guys.
These two guys, part of the new generation, that it's harder for them to understand. Some of my generation, we do understand. We pre-mobile phones, but not pre-telephones. And so, you have to go back, and then you had telegrams, which changed the world, where you can send a message to someone straight away, and they could get something instantaneously.
I'm old enough to remember dial-up.
Yeah.
That sound, you couldn't be on the phone if you're on the internet or whatever.
Yeah. They're using the phone,
crazy
same phone line. Yeah, bad days, people, but wonderful days all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you've got to take some of that and wash your brain of it just over the next 2 hours. You've got to say, I want to get into I got to imagine what it's like not to have contact and not to know what's happening.
Because the things that like with the things that were happening particularly in the Galatians that we were speaking about, when they're undoing his work essentially, and then he would hear a report of it. By the time he heard the report, the undoing
It's already been happening.
Has taken effect, essentially.
So even if someone says, so-and-so came to the church this morning and said this, time they write that, give it to someone or take it themselves, they're talking, weeks, months of journeying. Often if it's given to someone who's got to give it to someone else who takes it to someone else, and Paul gets it and it's like, that was a month ago. So even if they wrote it straight away, that's 1 month of it. That's festering, and what's happened?
And another month to get it back.
It's such a crazy thing. Like, how would he be feeling just personally? It's like, I spent years with these people, or and now so much time, all this work. What's this? Why is this happening?
I invested in this.
Yeah.
So Josh, I want you to keep that imagining going. All right. I want you to sort of get that angst, get that feeling, because it's exactly what we're going to speak to this morning. Because by understanding that, then we understand why he wrote what he did and what he was trying to convey. And then we also sort of get in the heart of Paul as an apostle, as an evangelist, going and preaching the word to these people. How did he feel? And that then becomes not just, this is interesting to learn that, this gives me a better ability to understand a letter in the Bible, but also say, hang on a sec, what was important to him? And because what was important to him is a good sign, that should be important to us.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
I was spending time in prayer this morning, and I won't go into which passage because I don't want to get sidetracked. But I was reading a particular area. It's a very well-known passage, very well-known. And I said, God, this is weird. All right, open conversation. It was all fine. God, this is weird. This passage is weird, which means I've got to change.
Yeah.
This is really weird to me.
Yeah,
this is really weird. What you wrote here is weird. And it means, okay, that's weird to me. It means I've got to change because actually I'm the weird one. This is normal. I'm now, to me it stands really strange, which means that I'm not thinking good. So I was like, okay, God, can you help me change so this becomes normal?
Yeah.
And my old thoughts become weird.
Yeah.
It's weird that I would have thought that. And that's part of what we got to do is say, okay, if Paul was so focused on this is how Paul felt. This is what Paul was, his priorities were. I say, well, that's my priorities. And when I'm reaching out to people and I'm speaking to people and I'm developing people in Christ, well, do I feel the same way? Do I have the same approach? Can I relate to this at all? Because if I read it and it says, I don't relate to that, that's a sign that something has to change in me.
Yeah.
So it's first of all, what we're going to do is try and understand it, imagine ourselves and see ourselves in it. But then secondly, work out where that jars with us and what we need to embrace and what we need to see. So we've been doing that in the book of Galatians, and I was very tempted just to keep going. But I also was understanding this is not a study of Galatians, it's a study of book of Acts.
That's good.
And we stopped at Galatians because it was the first one, and it had all those elements, and it had all the essential things which really did feed into what was happening in the book of Acts, and there was so much overlap there. But I thought I was wanting to take sideways and talk about sonship, talk about the fruit of the Spirit, the living in the Spirit, all the things that sort of Paul goes on in the book of Galatians. And sometime, if you're hungry enough, we'll find a way to share that, because I'm certainly keen. But I thought, you know what we're doing? This is training you guys. Let's take this and move it straight on to another book. All right, let's move along and see how this applies to another part of the Bible in the book of Acts. So, and what I actually asked you guys to bring
Physical Bibles today.
physical Bible,
Going old school.
because I mentioned this to you. I don't know whether you got to do it, and that is to go through using the chart that we recommended. You can go back a few
2 weeks now.
a few weeks back when I got the chart from the ESV, I think, website, and they had a chart of the life of Paul and also the book of Acts, and you could go through and put the dates, all right? So I've done that, and because I've done this, I used green was my color code in my Bible for the places, and blue was my color code for dates and times. So I bought 2 pencils for you guys, a green and red, only one of each, so you can
Nice.
you can alternate and work out which one you want to do.
Right.
If you're happy to mark in your Bible, or you
Yeah.
can just use a pencil. You can do whatever you like. You can dip your finger in my in my smoothie and write it in the corner. Look like you're bleeding to death, but that's all right. I don't care, and you don't have to do this. You might want to follow along, do this, because I found it helpful. I'm not going to do the whole book of Acts. The information is there.
Yeah.
You can just go to the ESV, which is the English Standard Version.
That's what I feel.
So it's a good translation, and they've got some good notes on the internet about. You go to the ESV, you just type in timeline of Paul ESV, and you'll get the charts that I'm happy with in terms of timelines and things like that.
Yeah.
They will match out the teaching, so it won't make any confusion. But I'm not going to do the whole thing. We're going to start, though, from the book of Galatians and just do this
Yeah.
from Acts chapter 14 and verse 27.
So we go to Acts.
Yeah, Acts 14:27. I should pull this up on the screen.
So if you have a physical Bible, why don't you do? You can do this with us.
Yeah. If you haven't got it, this is why physical Bibles can be good fun sometimes.
To be fair, even if you are doing an online Bible, if you're using something like the Bible app or whatever, you can
put notes.
You can put
in.
notes in it.
You can
put
highlight
your notes in. Highlight these passages as well.
Yep. So, but I thought if you want to do this, so all I did, and you can do it my way, or you can do it. Find your own style.
Yep.
I would often just have some way of recognizing places and highlighting a particular color or a circle or something like that. And so every time there was a place, I would just be able to see it. So here, and sometimes the color changed depending on what I was doing and things like that, as long as you're done.
Yeah.
So here in Iconium, I can see Iconium, Lycaonia, Lystra, Derbe. In the book of, this is that chapter 14, Antioch, Pisidia, Pamphylia, Antioch, Attilia. So I can just see them quickly.
Yeah.
Because that's relevant to what's happening.
Yeah.
In the margin, there's something that you can't tell from looking in the text, and that is the date and the year.
Yeah.
So you have other people that have done that. We talk about in the book of Galatians how it all works. And so next to chapter 14, verse 27, when they had arrived and gathered the church together, they began to report all things that God had done with them, how it opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. This is the end of the first missionary journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you can go back to where were they sent out? And okay, so the chapter 13, verse 1 is where they are sent out. Okay, let's do it from there.
What's the date?
Chapter 13, verse 1. We'll go back one. Chapter 13, verse 1. They're at Antioch,
What's the date?
and that's AD 46 to 47. So the first missionary journey starts here at 46. This is the first missionary journey, AD 46. So they start here, and round, so we're and off they go. So by the time we're going to skip through to Acts chapter 14, verse 27.
Acts 14:27.
That was the verse we had up just before.
Yeah.
That's the end of the first missionary journey, and you're going to write AD 48.
AD 48.
So it's taken somewhere between 2 years. Okay, so
I could also use that.
and I also write under there, he wrote Galatians. That's when Galatians was written.
Put that in,
Yeah.
put that in black there. Perfect. So at the end of here.
Yeah, so the same place as you wrote AD 48, he wrote Galatians in that time. So in that moment between then and when people came up from Judea saying, unless you're circumcised. So if you go to chapter 15, verse 1, some men came up from Judea, began teaching the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. Same issue that was happening in Galatians.
Yeah, okay.
He now is addressing it here. So there's probably some overlap. That they might have come up and he might have written a letter at the time. But I don't believe he'd gone down to Jerusalem, which is what he does in Acts 15. You can put at verse 6 of chapter 15, and the apostles and elders came together and looked into this matter. AD 48-49, somewhere in that time.
48, 49.
Yeah, is when they come down to Jerusalem. So Galatians is written sort of before that time.
Yep.
And now they've come down here. It's almost, 48, they finished the thing. Within somewhere time in the next 12 months, they've come down to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
All right. Then they plan to go on another missionary journey. So verse 36, they've taken that letter, they've started to share it, and Paul wants to go to on another missionary journey, and sadly there's a division between Paul and Barnabas, but AD 48 to 49 is here still. So we're still in that same time frame.
Where they separate?
No, from verse 36, that's where Paul says, let us return.
And this is still AD 48.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this is not... I'm in 15 now.
Yeah, still staying for 15.
Oh, 15, yeah.
Verse 36. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brethren in every city which we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. So that's the seeds of the second missionary journey.
Yeah.
They start talking about it. We're going to do this, except they have a division about whether John Mark should join them. Paul says no way, and Barnabas says yes way.
It's my family.
Yeah, it's family. We're family. Barnabas is very much of the Fast and Furious franchise. Family.
Family.
Yeah. He was the Stitch man, Disney. If you don't get that Disney reference, God bless you. Thank you.
It's a good film. Don't you go dissing Stitch.
How dare you?
So
Stitch on live
now the
stream.
only difference here is AD 48/49. It's somewhere around. It's either AD 48 or 49.
Yeah.
They've ready.
It's not 48 to 49. It's
No,
48.
it's
Yeah.
48. 48, 49. We're ready to go. And the missionary journey is going to go for a couple of years. They come back at 51, but you don't have to put that in if you don't want to.
Where's that? I'll put it while I have the cards.
Well, some. Yeah. So.
Acts 18.
Well, you can go down to Acts 18:23.
Yeah.
That's the third missionary journey starting.
Yeah.
And that's AD 52. So 48, 49 they started. 52 they're doing the next one. So everything happens in that time frame at some point. Okay. All right, so let's head off on the second missionary journey. So we're not timing the first one.
Yep.
We are the second. AD 49 in chapter 16, verse 1. He came to Derbe and Lystra. So we haven't really done much. So we're still we're AD 49 by the time we get.
Where is this in? Acts 15.
Acts 16 now. verse 1. So now we're working our way through the second missionary journey.
That's 80.
49.
Yeah. All right.
Oop, that broke.
I'm just gonna go. I need a sharpener.
Yeah.
The blue's like, do you have a sharpener on you? Do you have one in your Bible bag?
Yeah, I probably do. I might be.
It's because it's not up. It's getting less and less readable on the white paper.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I can read this now, but if I have to come back and read this, I'm
Yeah.
going to be like, ah.
Yep, I do. There you go. And I got one that catches the.
Oh, excellent. Never thought it'd be sharpening on Breakthrough Academy, did you?
Welcome to Breakthrough Sharpeners.
Yeah.
All right. So, if you want to go just for completeness, go back to Acts 14. Sorry. Yeah, Acts.
So where is it? So,
Sorry,
1536 is the start of the second missionary journey. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go back to Acts 15. Sorry, 1535.
Yeah.
1535, which just because it's got the name of the place there.
Yeah.
But Paul and Barnabas stayed in Antioch. All right. So if you want to circle Antioch, because what you're saying there is that's where the second missionary journey started.
Yeah.
Antioch. All right. So if you're doing we're doing the places and the name and the times. So Paul and Barnabas stayed in Antioch. Verse 35. Then Paul said, "Let's return."
So, sorry, what are we doing in 35?
Verse 35. Just the word Antioch.
To just highlight it.
Yeah. So that's your key for a key place there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just circle them in a coloured pencil. That helps you can still see them. It sort of stands out then.
Yep.
I'm just doing little squares.
Yep, that works.
Yep.
And so chapter 16 verse 1 is he now launches on his way, and he came to Derbe and to Lystra.
So we're circling these.
Yep. Now you would just go to iMaps. Remember iBible Maps? And you could follow this online. We've talked about doing maps, so that's...
Richard suggested we should use our teeth as a sharpener. I like it, Richard.
Yeah, we're not in the country, Richard. We're here in the city. We know how you country guys do things.
Yeah.
So Derbe and Lystra, I sort of like, I'm telling people to do stuff, but I'm also aware that some people are not. They haven't been. This might be the first time. So, iBibleMaps.com. Okay, that's our recommended place to go to if you want to get a map. And so iBibleMaps.com, they've got interactive maps here, and you can just pull down from the map index and say we are going to do Saul and Paul's journeys, okay? And we are going to do the second missionary journey, and this will do it. This will actually animate it.
Antioch, Tarsus, Derbe.
All right,
Lystra.
now
For Derby?
it's starting it down in Jerusalem because it's taking it from when the letter was written, telling that this is what we should do.
Yeah. And this is the second
But
missionary journey?
I'm taking it from Antioch because that's where he had the fallout with Barnabas, and that's where I think, for me, that's where the missionary journey started.
Yeah.
This was the preparation for it.
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so Derbe and Lystra. Remember, it just mentioned those two names.
Yeah, 16.
So remember Galatians. This is moving through the area of the Galatians,
Yeah.
and Derbe and Lystra. So away he goes.
I think I know the answer to this, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Pause it. And for anyone else who's watching, says it's in the area of the Galatia. Where does
Yeah.
it say that?
It doesn't say this in the text. I'm
Okay.
just telling you that's.
But so Galatia is obviously listed higher up.
Okay.
Is that because that's sort of the
that's the northern Galatian area?
Yeah.
But Galatians, go back to listen a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Galatians. This region included this area. A lot of people thought this was the only area of Galatia.
Yeah.
So if you look at, I think like scholars like Ironside, I think his name is, a very famous commentary series, he spoke to that Paul was writing to the Galatians up here, which means that it would affect the timings and everything and where he was writing. But Galatia, they've come to find through, also this area is referred to as Galatia.
Would that a modern example? I could be totally off on this.
Yeah.
Would be something like America having North and South America, and it's like you would refer to North America as
America.
It's still
North
the
America
Ameri-
is
the
America.
Americas.
Yeah.
But if you were doing stuff in South America, you could still be saying, I'm
I'm
writing to the Americas.
Yeah.
So there's North America is just...
North
North America is known as America,
America.
but it's also just North America and South
Yeah,
America.
yeah, if you suddenly found somewhere, they also refer to this area as America.
Americas. Like if you...
They
They're
were
writing...
Mexico.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're writing to Mexico and they
And
describe
I say,
it as
I'm writing to the Americas, America, and I say, and you say, he's writing. No, it must be North America. No, in the time frame, the continent of America, that was also referred to as
Exactly.
America. So yeah, similar sort of thing. So this is also referred to as Galatia. It's so you hear about the North Galatian theory, the South Galatian theory. South Galatian, it just works so well with the Book of Acts and everything. That's why, because it becomes very tricky to work out when Paul said he went and visited them, and he's like, when did he do this? You know, we're like trying to fit it in because it doesn't. Even in this journey, he doesn't go there.
Yeah.
So it's like
The Galatians?
Yeah, to
Yeah.
the north. You know, so. This is the Galatian region, the churches that he spoke to, because remember the first missionary journey, he went down through Cyprus, came up through here, ministered to these towns and these places.
lost our blue pencil.
Established a church there, and then came back, skipped over Cyprus and came back to Antioch. And then now that they went down to Jerusalem, had the council, came back, and now he's going again. They have the fallout, so Barnabas and Mark head back to Cyprus, their home place.
Surprising.
And he says, I want to visit the churches that we went to. So he goes through, and it mentions it fairly quick. He goes through Tarsus. Remember, his name is Saul of Tarsus. So he grew up there, so, home through there. And he gets over to Lystra, and something happens in Lystra. He picks up a replacement for John Mark called Timothy, son of a Jewish woman. So Timothy is picked up at Lystra, and so we're not going to speak to a lot of these things. We're moving down. Then he wants to work out where to go. Verse 6.
They went through Phrygia.
Yeah. You might be pronouncing it just as well as I did. They're passing through the cities there, delivering the decrees which had been decided upon by the apostles and elders who were in Jerusalem for them to observe.
And Galatia?
So that's important. Remember I said that's why I think
Galatia.
Galatians was written first, because otherwise he would have included that.
Yeah.
He's really keen now to read it to them.
Yeah.
He would have just sent it
Yeah.
as a letter. All right.
In Galatia,
And so the church was being strengthened.
verse 6.
So the churches were being strengthened in faith and increasing number, and they passed through Phrygian and the Galatian region.
I just have Galatia. Highlight that.
And
It's
the Phrygian
Through the area of Phrygia and
Galatian region. So these are areas rather than cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So sometimes they mention states, or what I'd call a state or a region, and sometimes they mention a city, and we don't know the difference. So it's like saying they went to Victoria and Melbourne, and we think went to two cities.
Yeah.
No, Victoria is the region, Melbourne is the city.
We know.
And so
They're one and the same.
So here we go. We've always got to start from Jerusalem, up and around. Come to Derbe, Lystra. I'm going to let it go a little bit so I can just pause it. And he's trying to, what he's doing up to there. All right, pause that. All right, so you can see that they're traveling. We get to Lystra. The Phrygian region is this region. This map doesn't have regions on it. That doesn't help. Phrygian is around here, and Galatia is here.
Yeah.
And he wants to minister down here. He wants to go to Galatia. He wants to get in this area, and the Holy Spirit says no. Verse 6 says, and having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. Nope, can't go. When we say Asia, we're not talking about modern Asia too. Turkey, the area of Turkey was known as Asia.
That helps.
So
Asia.
just
Asia.
there's two Antiochs, and there's Asia that's not our Asia.
In Galatia, it's too.
It's got. This is the Asia that I was reading all this week about Alexander the Great. He was 300 years before this time, and he conquered all this area. This was the area that he conquered. Anyway, it's got nothing to do with this this morning. And then when they came to Mysia, they were trying to go into Bithynia.
Are we highlighting these cities or not?
Yeah, you can, because these are sort of places that are.
Yeah.
So he was trying to go into Bithynia. Mysia is this area here, and Bithynia he was wanting to go is up here. So he's coming up here. You can see, I'm wanting to go up here. I can't. I wanted to go Phrygia. I want to Galatia. I can't. God says not, and he says, don't go into Asia. Well, where can I go? So eventually it's like he's been squeezed and he ends up at Troas, which is on the port.
Yeah.
Not many places you can walk from there.
Yes.
So verse 8 says, and passing by Mysia, they came down to Troas. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. A certain man of Macedonia was standing appealing. That, by the way, Alexander the Great was a Macedonian.
Yes.
Was standing and appealing
So
to
the
him, saying,
Dacoses.
yes, they also had the Great.
They also Nick the Great as well as
Come over to Macedonia and help us. And when he had seen the vision, immediately he thought going to Macedonia, including that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. All right, so that they're here. So you can see God squeezed him, and then he gets a vision of Macedonia.
Yep.
That's why we're here. Come over here. So he said, well, because it could have. We just think, well, that's obvious. But there's also Athens, Corinth. He could have gone down there. He could have gone down to Crete. He was trying to find out where do we go from here. But no, Macedonia. So that gives him the clue. And so that on a straight course. So the next day, verse 11.
I'm up to verse 10.
Yeah, and then verse 11, therefore putting out to sea from Troas, we ran a straight course to Samothrace, and then the following day to Neapolis. These are places...
them or not?
They're there, but they're just...
They're just...
We're
not
passing through.
They're dimensions.
Yeah, they're the mentions. And from there to Philippi. There's one you'll know.
There's one, yeah.
All right, because we recognize stories of the Philippian jailer. We recognize that he wrote a letter to the Philippians. Famous letters, famous place. So now we're into somewhere, which is the leading city of the district of Macedonia, a Roman colony, and we're staying in the city for some days. Do you notice how he puts that in? Roman colony, gives it context. It's a major place of...
Would that have been in the original text, or would that be people have added that in to give... Because...
sometimes, yes. Sometimes...
Because Luke wrote Acts, and he was writing for... Timothy, what?
Luke was writing it as a...
Who's it? He says he was writing it to at the start of Acts?
He says he was writing it to...
Theophilus.
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 Yeah, he was writing
would that be
Theophilus.
because Theophilus didn't know, or would Theophilus have known and that's been added by scholars over time to give context to us nowadays?
It's probably Luke writing as a historian.
Okay. Knowing that this is going to go beyond Theophilus.
Yeah, this is the Theophilus as a historical record.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes if you look in your text, for instance, the word Roman colony there. Where are we?
I'm at verse 12.
12, yeah.
Yeah, verse 13, so here, and verse 12. A Roman colony, okay. The textual criticism, if you found a whole lot of text, didn't have that word a Roman colony, and some did, they would make an assessment as whether it's been dropped out or added in. But if they have it consistently through all the texts, then they say it was just in there.
Yeah.
All right, but they would only, for instance, if it sort of became a late appearance, they've added it because...
What's that?
Like a Roman colony. That could be like a note that someone put in later, and it got inserted in the text. But there's no textual evidence for that, so therefore...
It just stays.
It was there. All right, but that's the sort of things that can get squeezed in because it's a little footnote that becomes part of it.
Yeah.
But footnotes were actually included in the writings. They weren't always added by someone else. Many times people writing, knowing who they were writing it to, would add their own footnotes and comments.
True.
So that's quite normal. That's why it's actually quite good and normal for us to put context onto things, because the Bible writers did it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's right,
It's very normal to go and do some research, find out a little bit about it, because the writers felt it was important for us to understand that. So we should just do that as a normal point. So what we do in our Bible study is actually not just something we've invented. The Bible writers themselves would often do this.
That's good.
So that's a normal part of doing Bible study. All right, so they're in Philippi. We're not going to stay in Philippi. If you don't know the story, you can read it later. And they end up in jail.
There's one more in verse 14. There's one more in verse 14. I'm not sure if you highlighted it.
A certain woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira. Well, that's just where she came from.
I just put that in there because it gives a bit of if you go back to the I'd just be interested. So we're currently in Philippi,
Yeah.
aren't we? If you go back to the map, I was just like, where is, if it says where
Thyatira is?
Thyatira is.
I don't know where Thyatira is.
Because it'd be interesting if you...
Thyatira is here.
Okay.
All right, she's from there, but she's living over there.
Okay, so it's just like gives a bit of
the reason I
context.
know that is because of my extensive Bible knowledge, and I looked at my Bible,
It's
in
got
the map, and there's one that shows where it is. All right. Okay, so we're over at Philippi. So we're now what we're now into is the new part of the first missionary journey.
Yep.
This part was revisiting.
Yep.
Here we were trying to do missionary work and couldn't.
Yeah.
Ended up here. Philippi is now we are really on our expansion plan.
Okay.
Right? So
I'm just going to put a note in there. So, like, you'd say, like, from verse 1 to verse...
from verse
1 to 13?
verse
1 to 11.
Yeah. Verse 1 to 11. That's them getting to where they need to be.
Yes.
I'm just going to put, like, there. No, it's just like a section off in my Bible, just be like, trying,
Yeah, getting on course, finding where they need to be.
Yeah.
However you want to do it. I have studied that passage over and over many times over the years. I find it fascinating because it gives insight into the challenges of Paul getting the will of God. This was not Paul sitting back at Antioch being given a roadmap and saying this is what we do. This is having to take a step of faith, get someone like poor old Timothy, get him circumcised because everyone knows you're from the Greek. Oh, we're not actually going to hang around here anyway, Sorry about that. But we will be probably in synagogues later. They'll find out. It wasn't for nothing. And away they go. But yeah, it's an amazing passage. Anyway, so they get to Philippi, and then from Philippi, so
I don't mean to keep leaning out. I'm drinking this in a white t-shirt, so I'm trying to drink it as far away from myself as possible.
That's all right. And so all of the rest of chapter 16 is what happened in Philippi with them being in prison, being released supernaturally, them being told to go, and they departed. So chapter 17 verse 1, we are in the next phase now, and this is still AD 49. Okay, so chapter 17 verse 1, we're still, it's taken a little while, but it hasn't taken a year, over a year. We're still in the same year.
Yeah.
All right. And so when they had travelled through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica. All right, now...
Apollonia.
I don't know, can I zoom in here? A little bit. Anyway, they're over here. They skip through some towns. Why do they skip through towns? Well, because verse 2 gives us a clue, and according to Paul's custom, he went there. He went to the. Verse 1 came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews.
He's still looking for the.
So this is his starting point. Well, he starts with the Jews and then expands out to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
But he wants to do it through the Jews. He loves the Jews. No problems with the Jews. Verse 2. And according to Paul's custom, he went to them and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and giving evidence that Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, this Jesus who I'm claiming to you is the Christ. And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas.
I love, again, I'm not sure if this is ESV or how it's written, but it's got that Aussie sarcasm to it. And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a great many of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women. It's the whole Aussie way, What's the weather like? Oh, it's not warm outside.
How many went? Not a few. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And New American does the double negative and turns it back to a positive, and a number of the leading women. Now, I want you to pay attention to this because we're actually going to be studying Thessalonians.
Yeah.
All right. So read this now carefully. It's not very long. But now you've got to get in the head. Also, you've got to read it through the eyes that it's a summary by Luke.
Yeah.
It's not going to include everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same as when we read the Galatians, you suddenly find there's... by the time you match what's in Galatians and what's Acts, you get a bigger picture. It's not like, this is what's here is everything that's in the letter. Paul's going to write a letter to the Thessalonians. He's going to include more information, and often not so much information. He will include inferences because they knew it. So why would he state it? So he would say things that they knew, and was like, well, we've got to try and work out what they knew because of this is how he's writing.
Just to confirm with this, are you saying that the letter to the Galatians was written while he was in Galatia, or would the letter have been written?
He was
so the letter to Thessalonica.
No, he wrote this. He wrote the letter to the Thessalonians afterwards.
Yeah. So he's never been to Thessalonica before. He didn't go to the first missionary journey.
This is his first time in Thessalonica.
And then so he's going to be here for a bit.
Yeah.
Then he'll go finish the journey, get back to.
No, he writes it during the journey.
But he writes it not while he's with them. He writes it afterwards
because he doesn't need to write a letter when he's with them.
Yeah.
He just speak it.
So now he's writing it. It's almost a review or a follow up.
Yes. So
this is the prelude to what we're going to read in First Thessalonians. Okay.
Well, we've got to say, and what you're looking for though is this provides Luke's overview of it, not necessarily everything that happened. Yeah. Remember when Luke talked about Paul and he was in Damascus, and then he said, and then Paul went down to Jerusalem, and it sounds like it happened the next day, and then we found out there was actually a couple of years when he'd just gone off to in regions of Arabia and then came back, and he's like, well, you don't really need to know about that, so I'm not mentioning it. And it's not that he didn't know about stuff, because later on, when he was telling Paul's defense before the Romans, he includes information. Yeah. So it's not as if Luke says, I didn't know that. He does know that. He just chooses not to include it. So even when he condenses stuff, it's not because he didn't know what was happening. It's just because sometimes you don't need to know. You just this is the highlights.
This isn't the purpose of why I'm doing this.
I'm not trying to write to get everything. I'm trying to get the key things, and you have to sort of. This is a long record, so some of the things he's writing here, he puts dates in, and you sort of say, okay, this happened the next day. Does it? It sort of implies and infers that it happened the next day. You think it happened the next day, the same as it looked like Damascus had happened straight away. Yeah. But actually there was quite a break in between. Yeah. And so we have to sometimes read that with the understanding it gives numbers and times, and then you find out, there's actually a little bit of silence in there. Could be a couple of months. Yeah. Could be a few months.
Is it the book of John where he says, if I were to record all of Jesus' miracles, it would be a big book. Yeah. It's already a big book, it'd be an even bigger book.
It'd be long. So he says, this happened, and afterwards you might say, Luke, you missed a bit. Oh, no, I didn't. It was all there if you're reading carefully. All right. So I want you to read with those eyes. Yeah. That this is not an exhaustive account. Yeah. This is a highlights account. It covers the key things. And then when we read Thessalonians, we'll have to read back into it and make sense of some of it. That's quite normal, and that's what you should do. Okay, but I want us to pay attention to this and read it carefully. And now I want you to start imagining, because you got to get in the heart of Paul. Paul's come here from where? He's been persecuted by the Philippians, beaten up, thrown into jail. Now he's been sent on his way because, we shouldn't have done it anyway. But they remember that he came out to the Roman jailer, not the Roman jailer, the Philippian jailer, and it says it took him to his home and they cared for their wounds. They'd been beaten with rods badly, and so he had bruises and cuts and abrasions, and they tried to put probably some sort of gum on it, some oils, things to try and soothe it. Paul is walking down. He's walked through a couple of places. He gets to Thessalonica. Have all those wounds healed by now? I'm guessing he's still carrying some aches and some pains from it. Yeah. I want to get in the mind. Persecution is fresh on his radar. Yeah. And
he's on the lookout.
And so he's ready to go, and he begins to speak. So verse 2. According to Paul's custom, he went there and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the scriptures. Just a little question. Why did he only reason on the Sabbaths? It talks about later. Remember,
Is that because? Is that when they would have been in the temple, or
let's skip the
synagogue?
synagogue. Yeah, chapter 18. After these things,
where are we in chapter
18? We're skipping down to
what verse?
Corinth, verse 1. He comes down to Corinth and he works with people because he's the same trade. He's a tent maker. He stayed with them, and then working for by trade they were tent makers. And he was reasoning in the synagogue every Sabbath and trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. How often was he ministering?
Every Sabbath.
Every Sabbath. Do you reckon a pattern in the tent is every Sabbath? But it also says that he was working as a tent maker.
Yeah.
But when Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul began devoting himself completely to the word, solemnly testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Christ. Paul, in his letter to Philippians, thanked them for the gift that they would send, the money that they would send that enabled him to.
Yeah.
So he might be working during the week as a tent maker.
Yeah.
Which is why he's only ministering on the Sabbath.
When they came down from Macedonia, they bring money with them. He suddenly can preach all during the week. Now, just chapter 17. Back to chapter 17.
So I put a note here. Oh no, because this isn't when it's written. But yeah,
that he is ministering. Now he's only just come down from Philippi. He's been here for 3 weeks, but he's working. He's only ministering on the Sunday for 3 weeks. Let's just have a quick jump over to Philippians 4:16. Okay, this is the letter of.
Oh man.
Let's read verse 15. And you yourselves also know, Philippians, that at the first preaching.
What chapter, sorry?
Chapter 4, verse 15, Philippians 4. You yourselves also know, Philippians, that at the first preaching the gospel, after I departed from Macedonia. So guess what we're talking about this time?
Yep.
No church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, but you alone. You were the only one that really supported me. Now, remember, we went down to Thessalonica, and how often did he preach? Every Sabbath for 3 weeks.
Yep.
For even in Thessalonica, you sent me a gift more than once for my needs.
Yeah.
There's a possibility he was there for 3 weeks because he was working during the week until some money was sent to him from the Philippians.
Yep.
And that freed him up to not have to be just doing it during the week, but more than once. So he was there in Thessalonica long enough to receive a couple of gifts.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. So we have a clue here. He was there long enough
to receive
a couple of gifts.
Yep.
And it freed him. I'm not going to do it now. There's also evidence in terms of inside his letter talking about this time.
Yeah.
We'll wait till we get there. All right, but so just get a picture. Okay, so we're back to the book of Acts. 3 Sabbaths, and then explaining and giving evidence that Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead. This Jesus, whom I am proclaiming to you, is the Christ. That's his message. That's the emphasis of it. And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, along with a great multitude of God-fearing Greeks and a number of the leading women. Now, it sounds like this all happens right after the 3 weeks. But we already know from his letter to the Philippians, he received help a couple of times.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been, would have been very quick support if it only happened in 3 weeks. There's more than likely a few months here.
Yeah.
But the 3 weeks is the initial, when I'm just preaching there, but now this all happens, but he's also here. So we don't know. Between 3 weeks and 3 months is somewhere in that period. Yeah. That's a guess. But the Jews, becoming jealous and taking along some wicked men from the marketplace, formed a mob and set the city in an uproar. And coming upon the house of Jason, they were seeking to bring them out to the people. I've just been thrown into prison in Philippi. Now I'm here, and the Jews here go nuts. And when they did not find them, they began dragging Jason and some brethren before the city authorities, shouting, "These men who have upset the world have come here also." And Jason has welcomed them, and they all act contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there is another king, Jesus.
Where are we up to, sorry?
Verse 7 that was, now verse 8. And they stirred up the crowd, and the city authorities heard these things. And when they had received a pledge from Jason and the others, they released them. in verse 10, and the brethren immediately. So after this happens, it's an uproar. It's it's getting violent. They're trying to find Paul. They're trying to find Silas, they immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea. So they have to sneak them out of the city.
Yep.
So that's it. That's in Thessalonica. That's all we know. We know about 3 weeks.
So basically, we understand he was there for somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 months.
Yeah.
His message was, "This Jesus who I proclaim is the Christ, and he had to suffer."
Yeah.
That was his.
Is that the only thing he preached?
But that's all. That was enough. That was the thing that Luke took enough notice to.
Yeah, that's.
It's like, okay, I think of the fact that when I remember we had to do this through uni. We had to report on an event, so I had to watch like a 2-hour live stream interview with a author, and then I had to write a 500, 300 word, maybe only 300 word review of it.
Yeah.
You can't get everything. So it was all about take your notes and then pick what parts are the most important to you, and then you report on that. So
that's what
not
that's
everything
what Luke's doing.
not everything was taught, but those are the things that Luke found important enough to reference.
That's exactly how it works.
If he could reference anything, he referenced that he was teaching that Christ had to suffer and Jesus was key. Even the fact that it's like Jesus is Christ, and then later it's sort of like Jason was saying, Jason, see them, they're all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus. That he's, again, the only other quote, so to say, that's in there is about him saying that Jesus is Lord, Jesus is King.
And that was what they used as their flashpoint.
Twice he's willing to bring that out.
They got men from the
for the Jews that didn't believe it.
Yeah, they got a mob in the city. So it's all happening, and away they go. All right, not very. Did Paul leave because he was comfortable that things were established and in good order? Because what's he doing there? He's planning a church.
Yeah.
Not just preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
He's planning a church, and first a New Testament church. And how much teaching have they had? Whatever you could squeeze in that time. In that time, they're both getting saved and getting whatever foundations they can for the establishment and setting up of a church. Not a lot of time in the moment of great turmoil.
Yeah.
Lots is happening.
The place is getting rowdy.
Yeah. So people getting saved. So you got the people who got saved in the first week, and by 2 months' time, maybe you got new people getting saved every week. Those have been 2 months. How do you teach them? How do you get them new saved? How do you've got to? I can imagine you preaching to a congregation. There's 20 people there, so I'm preaching to them. Next week I'll take you to the next part, and I get there and there's 50 people. Well, I better review a little bit because next week there's 100 people. Well, I should review for them as well. It's very hard to teach and review and move forward, and that's all right. That's all right. We'll just stay here for a while and get this really established.
Yeah.
And then it goes really pear-shaped, and a big mob is formed, and they're pulling Jason and the others out, and they're saying, making accusations, and the brothers all say,
"Let's get him out of there.
Well, you need to get out of here." So he's like, but I was just getting started.
Just getting some traction.
Just getting some traction. And he's also not saying, "Oh well, things are going so well, maybe I could leave early." They're under intense pressure.
Yeah.
He's leaving them at the moment of great pressure.
Yeah.
This is where you've got to start to get into Paul's heart and mind. We say, okay, what does he think? Well, he's like, oh, well, I did my best. Now my focus is on Berea. Yeah. Now my focus is here. Now I go from here to here. Like
it says here, when they arrived, they went into the Jewish synagogue. Now these Jews are more noble than those in so this is like they just went back to teaching. He went back to teaching the word, but just in
start.
Yeah.
So we're going to the next place where there's a synagogue.
So it's not that he necessarily wanted to leave.
No.
He wanted to see it out.
Yeah, he wanted to get us.
Get the foundation.
Okay, think about
plant the church.
Paul's purpose. Yeah, was his purpose to go and preach the gospel, or was it to establish people in the gospel as churches? He was not wanting to just preach the gospel and move on.
Yeah.
That's why in the Galatians, he was so you get that angst. We're setting it all up. It's all doing well. Who came in and messed it up? And, you idiots. Tell these people to come in to go all the way. We're really mad with them because So he's wanting. He really cares about the people he ministers to.
He's invested.
He's invested, gets them established, and he's really wanting. And he's really mad when it gets all messed up. So now he comes here. In the churches in Galatia, it was teachers from Judea that came up that was going to destroy it with their teaching and get them away from the good news. Which people say, it's not a doctrinal issue because it's a whole lifestyle issue. You go back to our very last meeting with the whole point to Paul was why it was so... it wasn't because, you've broken a doctrine. It was because you have missed the big picture of what it's all about. You're leaving, this is so amazing, and you're going back to that. You're going back to Shadowlands. So here, different pressure though. He's pushed out quickly.
Yep.
And he...
whereas Galatia, he was revisiting, it was like they'd sort of taken it and now they were being hit against it. This one, they hadn't even taken it before they'd been hit. He
hadn't. There was really no time to get things established, and he's out.
And this was all within a couple of months.
Yeah,
maybe possibly.
Yeah, well, a minute, at least 3 weeks, and not very long, obviously.
Yeah, and so you can see how he's feeling, where he's actually committed to not just starting something and going, and then starting something here and here and here. Start something here, get the foundation, get the traction going.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is what he wants to do, but then he has to leave.
So he comes to Berea. He says they're more noble-minded, and many of them believed. When the Jews of Thessalonica found out that the word of God had been proclaimed by Paul in Berea, verse 13. Yeah, they came there likewise, agitating and stirring up the crowds. Well done, Thessalonians. Can't be just content with kicking me out of your... And so then immediately the brethren sent Paul out to go as far as the sea, and the Silas and Timothy remained there, where they remained in Berea, and he moved down to...
Is there any other places in Berea?
Athens. Sorry? Berea's a city.
Any other names that would go under or not?
No.
Okay, because I was going to say, I was interested. I'm like, okay, reading it, Thessalonica, they start. He writes a letter. I wonder whether he wrote a letter to Berea and why it's not in there.
And the Bereans were more noble-minded. They were the better lot.
But Silas and Timothy remain there. Whether it was you've got Silas and Timothy, I'm going to focus on Thessalonica that has no one. Again, just getting in the mind of Paul, is it instead of writing you a letter, I'm going to leave you Silas and Timothy, and the two of them are going to work with you.
And Berea, was that far from... maybe if they were more...
Let's have a look. Thessalonica, Berea.
Yeah. But if they were more noble here in Berea, it's but there's something... I don't know if it talks about this. Maybe leave these guys here. Maybe something can be sorted out, or when it
he gives it. So what's and okay, let's look at verse 15. We just now those who had conducted Paul brought him as far as Athens.
1 sec. Sorry, give me 1 second. I just want to
verse 15. So we're down to Athens.
Cool.
Athens is way down here, so we've done a big jump. There's other. It's not like that they're empty. It's just this is only the cities it's named. So all those places, skip those. And they're saying he took a boat to Athens down here.
Yeah.
Obviously another major capital area. Thessalonica was a major city too. It was a major.
Is it still?
Yeah, it's still there.
I was going to say Thessalonica.
Have a look where it's located.
Yeah.
On a port. Athens port. They often
big cities.
Cities.
Where
they're well and
trade.
And even though life changes, those places
because you can still trade off it.
Yeah, that's still important. Okay. So they bring him down to Athens and receiving command for Saulus and Timothy to come to him as soon as possible.
Okay. So he called them back.
He said, as soon as they can. So for some reason, you stay there.
Yeah.
Do what you can, then come down and join me. All right. So while he was in Athens, his spirit was being provoked, and we have the story of, and we actually, I think we studied this in terms of a message to unbelievers.
Yeah. That's right.
So we're not going to do that now. Let's go to chapter 18. After these things, so his preachers...
Wait, so how long is he in Athens from...
Just enough time to preach...
15 to... I'm trying to
34?
see what... So he's at... After this, he left 18. Okay, so I'm trying to mark in my Bible.
So after what's happened in Thessalonica, is he now just more moving through places now?
Well, now he comes down here. Berea is doing fine, and
Berea,
they come down there. So he comes down to Athens. He gets down there. He says, I notice you've got an idol here to an unknown god. Let me preach to you. So he uses that place with the Areopagus. I don't know how to pronounce it. Now all the Athenians and strangers visit there. Used to spend all their time nothing more than telling them, hearing something new, verse 21. So there was a place where they'd come to share ideas. They said, let's hear about this strange thing. And so he uses a message to the unknown God that you don't know about.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about. So
Yeah.
classic, let me share with people who are not Christians or not Jews or background.
And that's
of
the
this.
one with the same spirit, the same. Is that the same one?
What's that?
When he talks about it's the same spirit?
Uh,
Or is that a different place?
I'm not sure. It's you can go back and sort of revise yourself.
Yep.
And now in verse 18, chapter 18, verse 1, he leaves there and goes to Corinth.
Yeah.
And that's where he works as a tent maker.
Yep.
And he's preaching every Saturday.
It says in
Sabbath.
verse 5, Silas and Timothy arrived.
Silas and Timothy came down. So they didn't get. They came to Corinth, not to Athens.
Yeah.
So they've skipped there. And he begins devoting himself.
Is that
so
because,
when they come,
going back to the map,
yeah.
just thinking again, trying to get my mind on it. Where is that? Oh no, Athens is also on the
They're there.
Athens is also on the.
Well, Athens is big.
He was there.
No,
by
I didn't know
himself.
whether it was going to be the fact that because they would have like shipped out of
Yeah.
Thessalonica, whether they would have gone straight to Corinth because of that, or whether
they might have
Paul
stopped. Listen, they might have stopped and found Paul's not here. He's left a message.
He must have gone to
Yeah,
Corinth.
I was just thinking that.
The ship's probably stopped there anyway. You know,
Yeah.
So it's not a flight. It's not a stop all station. It's not. You know.
Yeah, he has to do all the stuff.
Yeah.
And then it
So,
keeps going.
but here, Berea near Philippi, likely that they've got money from the Philippians.
Yeah, and then they're
they
taking
bring
it down
it
to Corinth.
They bring it. They get the Paul, and Paul says, "Okay, I don't have to do a tent making now. I can
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
back to it." Same as in Thessalonica. I don't have to be working.
That's
I can
right.
be doing it. So you've helped me. And when they resisted and blasphemed, he shook out his garments. So in Corinth, so he goes. He said, "I'm going to go to the Gentiles." Typical story, isn't it? The Jews don't like him. He goes to the Gentiles, and he went
Where's this?
That was 18 verse 6. And so he says, "From now on, I shall go to the Gentiles."
Yeah.
Not because God already told him to. It's because you guys wouldn't receive me. And verse 7.
So if there's any other cities I forgot to.
No, we're still in Corinth for a little while. Then you've got key person.
Wait, I didn't do Athens.
Yeah, Athens and
I just need
verse
to mark
1.
where that.
And we're still at AD 49, maybe into 50.
No, I mean back in chapter 17, I didn't mark Athens up. 17, 15.
No, it's 17. No, that's not Athens. Oh, Athens. Sorry, yes, we're Corinth now.
16.
15 or 16.
So he
Yeah.
leaves Athens.
Yeah.
And he goes to Corinth.
Now, so Corinth, we've got the date AD, verse 1 of chapter 18, AD 49 to 50. We'll find out why he was there. We're spanning now over a period of 2 years.
Where are we?
We get that from verse 11.
80.
AD 49 to 50.
Like one or the other, or a that
Well,
whole-
it's okay. We're going to span at 49, 50, 51 in this time.
So it's like that's actually a year or so.
Yeah, so we're AD 49 now. We're moving into
I'll put
50.
80, 49 to 50 because that means it shows the.
Yeah, it's coming into that period. And then in verse 11, you see, and he settled there. This is in Corinth, a year and 6 months.
Oh, this is very.
Yeah, so a year. So
Verse
verse.
80, 49.
So verse 40. Yeah, verse. So verse 11.
Oh, it's,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've got
a broken blue pencil. If you have another blue pencil.
It's a big thick one. So.
That'll work. Well, that's way better.
You just have to.
Oh, that's
Oh, it works.
that's
Okay.
Let me try this.
much clearer.
All
Thank
right. Okay, and verse 11, 15 months. So now AD 50 to 51.
you. Oh wait, well,
Verse 11.
Verse 11.
so a year and 6 months.
Yeah, so we're
So
going to
80,
time.
51.
80.
Yeah, so AD 50 to 51. So,
This is the one time I can mark it in blue in the Bible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it's actually it gives you time frame there to.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot more readable, Dad.
Sorry.
That new pencil's a lot
Yes.
more readable than the
How
old one.
exciting.
Okay, there's your clue. Jay says get a good blue pencil.
I was going to say, get the blues. The green works a lot better with the blue. Oh, that's nice.
Okay, so while Galileo, so verse 12 was proconsul of Achaia. Okay, so here we have, what is this Achaia?
Where's this?
Verse 12. It looks like I pronounce it. I pronounce
wait,
it
what
the
chapter?
Verse
18,
18
verse 12, right.
So
Achaia.
I pronounce the CH.
Asaya?
I pronounce a K, as in Christian.
I didn't know whether to be Asaya because
No,
that Akai, like
I pronounce it with a hard K there, and then Achaia. Now that is a region. Okay, and it's at least it's on this map. Well done. Here, it's a region.
Okay.
Involves the Corinthian area.
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever that often comes up in different letters and things that Paul writes. So it's good to know that as a region.
Yeah.
So when he's talking about that, he's talking about the Corinthians and that region.
Okay.
All right. So that is it's good to know. Most people don't sort of know that because there's no letter to them, and there's no. But it is actually a region that is.
Which is also why we don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't hear it referred to very much.
Well, there's a book of the Bible where where people pronounce it different ways. I'm trying to think what it is.
Habakkuk and
Habakkuk.
In America, Habakkuk.
I've always heard
Habakkuk, but
I'm not sure it's an Aussie thing
I'm
or
no
whether-
expert.
Yeah. Down to verse 18, Paul returns down, and Paul, having remained there many days, took leave of the brethren, put out to sea for Syria, and with him were Priscilla and Aquila in Cenchrea.
Oh, so that's C for Syria. We marking that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna use my.
Sorry, we're just having a bit of trouble holding the pencils. Give us a second. Did he mark Syria in your Bible?
Caesarea and Cenchrea.
Mark them both.
Yeah, well, it's just names and places. Okay, can you see where Cenchrea is? It's just down here.
Yeah.
It's right, just right below. So he's heading for Syria. He's heading back. Syria. Remember that's Antioch. He's heading back to this region.
Yeah.
And he stops here. What for? Don't look in your Bible. What for? What does he stop there for?
Wait, where?
Cenchrea. You'll never guess.
Cenchrea.
Funeral up?
Yeah, you'd think so. No, get a haircut.
Wait, really?
A haircut. Oh, because he shaved his. Is that he shaved his hair?
Yeah, it says and with him in Cenchrea, he had his hair cut.
He cut his hair before he was
about. Now, for other people, if this was Brooke, she would.
Like that.
Key moments in your journeys. Had my hair coloured here. Had my hair cut here. Hair straightened here. Yeah. If you think I'm joking, if we're talking a holiday 10 years ago,
remember, yeah.
Brooke says, "Oh, that was the day I had my hair up."
Yeah.
Out of how many days that you've had your hair up?
Yeah, I remember, and I was wearing my blue top. I got no idea about those things. So anyway, he's keeping a vow. He's heading back. It's all, and then they came to Ephesus. So
What verse is this, sorry?
so this is still verse.
Verse
verse 19.
When do they leave?
18, 19.
Wait, sorry. 18 verse. Sorry, I'm with you, Lord.
Oh, yeah, he shaved his head.
So 18, he's leaving Corinth.
Wait, 18, 18?
18, yeah, he's leaving Corinth.
Okay, so he's up in Corinth until then.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he stayed there 18 months, and then he's like, it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to Syria, which is he's going to head to Jerusalem, and with him were Priscilla and Aquila in Cenchrea. He had his hair cut for his keeping a vow. They came to Ephesus, so they travelled over there.
Wait, 18, 18? I'm trying to mark it up because that way I can sort of see Easily.
Sorry, I said he was going back to Jerusalem. He didn't. He was going back to Antioch.
Where things are.
Jerusalem was the next
I
one.
like this.
Okay, so he comes to Ephesus, and
Ephesus.
he drops off Priscilla and Aquila. They came to Ephesus and he left them there. They only just joined. Anyway, now he himself entered the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. This is in Ephesus.
Yeah.
And when they asked him to stay for a longer time, he did not consent. So he's like, no, I'm not staying. Oh, Ephesus. What could have happened in Ephesus?
They wanted him to stay, but were they not receiving?
No, they were receiving, but he wanted to get. He was wanting to get back.
Oh, so that you're all good. I got to get back.
Yeah, he himself entered and reasoned with, and they asked him to stay longer. Sorry, I'm reading my. Asked him to stay for a longer time. He did not consent, but taking leave of them and saying, "I will return to you again if God wills. I'll come back." He set sail from Ephesus, and when he landed at Caesarea, went up and greeted the church and went down to Antioch.
Caesarea, that's another location, yeah?
That's the one that's down here.
Caesarea.
So
where's Ephesus? Okay, so that's quite a journey.
Yeah, so they might have stopped at some places on the way, do you know what I mean? But they didn't imagine if they did. Caesarea, and then from Caesarea back up to Antioch where they started. So he did, the ship was coming in there, back up here. Caesarea was a big port, a really major port, named after Caesar. I found that out a few weeks ago. Caesarea.
Caesarea.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, that's it.
Should have seen that one coming. And so that's the end of the second missionary journey.
He went up. And then the third one starts straight away.
And having spent some time there, he departed and passed successively through the Galatian region, Phrygia,
so this is the end of the...
This is verse 23. So this is the start of the third missionary journey. Just stops and starts.
Yeah.
Just having spent some time there.
Yeah.
Just let's not bother with the details. And we're not going to go into this now. Third missionary journey starts, and he heads off through Galatian and Phrygian, strengthening all the disciples, and then he starts to talk about Ephesus. So that's AD. The third missionary journey starts at AD 52 and goes for 5 years.
5 years.
Okay, so you can. Third missionary journey is AD 52 through to 57.
Okay.
But we're not going to do those dates now because he was at Ephesus for a long time.
It's been one of my favourite academies. This has been so helpful.
Remember, he comes back. He said, "I'm going to come back." Well, he does. Talks a little about what had happened.
God was willing.
Yeah, and he meets a guy called Apollos. We're not. I'm saying I'm not going to go into here, but I am. And because remember, it was in Acts 19:10.
That's been one of my favourite academies.
Yeah.
This is really fun. This is something that it's so much more fun doing this with someone else and doing this with a group with a teacher.
We're glad you've done the work.
And verse 10.
This is going to give me so much more context.
It does.
Not just having it there, but having it now in here.
Yeah.
So as I'm reading, I don't have to go out of my Bible to get.
Yeah.
I like as well. I've been putting in there trying to just section it off into where all the different churches and stuff. It's so good, or different cities. This has been so amazing.
Verse 10 of chapter 19 says, "This took place for 2 years, so that all who lived in Asia," remember Asia is the old Asia, Turkey, heard the word of the Lord, both Jews and Greeks. So if Ephesus, which became a key place, 2 years he stays there. This is where verse 11 says, "And God was performing extraordinary miracles," handkerchiefs, things happening. So it's all happening. 2 years. Remember, they said stay. He said, "I can't stay," but then he came back and then he stayed for a long time.
Yeah.
Ephesus is where John was based.
Okay.
At Isle of Patmos is just.
Ephesus. Okay.
Let's see if it's on the map.
Yeah.
No, they didn't bother to do it on this one. Just here, the Isle of Patmos
Wait, where's Ephesus?
is.
Yep. I've got it on this one.
It's just about here, Isle of Patmos. So he was banished to Isle of Patmos, but they said John was from the Church of Ephesus. Ephesus is where Mary, the mother of Jesus, was attending there. You get that not from the Bible accounts, but from some letters that were written just after the Bible times. And Timothy, pastoring at Ephesus. John wrote to the 7 churches, started with Ephesus, and they were around this area. So Ephesus was like the central one. So, a lot of stuff key to Ephesus.
Yeah.
But this one, I can't stay. Come here. Next missionary journey comes over, encourages the believers, stays there for quite a time.
Does he go up over into Macedonia? They could go to Philippi and Thessalonica and stuff or not?
Yeah, and okay, chapter 20, verse 1. I'll do it for you, Jay.
Thank you. Oh, I was actually just curious. Like, I didn't.
After the uproar, in Ephesus, it went nuts because they had a big temple there to the goddess Diana.
Yeah.
And they went nuts because they thought they were losing business. And so huge.
Departed from Macedonia.
Yeah. So verse 1, and after the uproar had ceased, Paul sent for the disciples. When he had exhorted them, taken his leave from them, he departed to go to Macedonia.
Yep.
And when he had gone through those districts and had given them much exhortation, he came down to Greece.
Oh, this time, don't mention anything that happened in Macedonia. We're second missionary journey. We spend like a lot of time in Thessalonica and Berea and Athens. This time, nah, we don't need to worry about our Macedonia.
Well, even here, when he had gone through the districts and given them much exhortation, he came to Greece. And he says he spent 3 months there, and a plot was formed against him by the Jews. So as he was about to set sail for Syria, so he was going to do the same thing, sail back.
Yeah.
But because of the plot, he determined to return through Macedonia. So he went up inland around instead of straight across, because so he didn't get
The
killed.
Berean.
And and he was accompanied by
Berean.
So you can see it in verse 4. He was accompanied by Sopater of Berea. By Aristarchus and Secundus of the Thessalonians, Gaius from Derbe, and Timothy and Tychus and Trophimus of Asia. So he's picked up a few people along the way.
Got some people with him now.
Yeah, so they just sort of... And
where does your Bible say Timothy's from? Verse 4.
From Timothy and Tychus and Trophimus of Asia.
Ooh.
And Gaius of Derbe and Timothy... Why is that?
Mine doesn't have Timothy from Asia.
Oh, just Tychus and Trophimus of Asia. That might...
It has
Timothy might not be a part of that group.
Yeah, mine has Sopater the Berean, son of Pyrrhus.
Yeah, no, because Timothy was a Lydia.
And the Thessalonians, Articurus and Secundus, and then it says Gaius of Derbe and Timothy and the Asians, Tychicus.
Yeah, that's probably right. I probably read it wrong because it was from...
I was just interested whether that was something that had changed over time.
It's from Lystra, so I misread it because they weren't...
That makes sense.
My bad. That's how mistakes happen. People jump commas and...
I was actually curious whether that was a us thing or whether that was a...
Now, for all this, from this point on, it's all about getting back to Jerusalem and people saying, don't go, don't go, don't go. We talked about that in one of the earlier academies. He gets to Jerusalem, he goes into the temple, it all goes south, he ends up in jail. He's where he wanted to go. Where was he wanting to go? Rome.
Oh no, before Spain.
Yeah, wanted to get to Spain, go via Rome, and all the rest. So we talked about it in earlier ones. Please go back and watch these in previous ones. So I'm just going to give you another couple of key things to mark in here. All right, at chapter 18, around that early part of when he's in Corinth, Paul writes 2 letters.
Where's this?
18.
Chapter 18, in the part where it says he came to Corinth. While he's at Corinth, he writes 2 letters. He writes to the Thessalonians twice.
First and 2nd Thessalonians?
Yeah.
Where does it say that? Or is that just understanding?
No, you get that from the letter to the Thessalonians.
Okay. No, I didn't know if it was a verse to highlight here or just...
No, often he doesn't. In these letters, it does not. In Acts, it won't say he wrote to them.
Yeah.
You get that from
the letter. Then you can find the time.
Context and stuff like that. Yep. And then if you just want it for completeness, go to chapter 19, verse...
We really can't hold on to these pencils.
19, verse 10, where he does the 2 years. So 19, verse 10.
Yep.
And that's when he writes 1 Corinthians.
Okay.
Just 1 Corinthians?
Now, I write that in my my margin, so that I got that's because they're key place things. So
exactly
18 verse 1. Have you written in?
No, I'm just waiting for the pencil.
Oh, do you want a normal pencil?
Sure.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
So what are we writing and where now?
So chapter 18 in the verse, in the first few verses there somewhere it says Paul writes first and 2nd Thessalonians. I should write.
Oh, yep. Got that.
Do you do THESS or?
Yeah, THESS, Thessalonians. And then in
1910.
1910, that's where he writes 1 Corinthians.
Okay.
And then, where's this? 19 verse 10.
Yep, he writes. Said I wouldn't, but I'm just doing it anyway. Chapter 19. Did I give you the dates for that?
No.
No, because I did the second missionary journey. So, chapter 19, verse 1.
And this is after.
So now he's in Ephesus.
57 or 58 or.
Yeah, this is AD 52 to 55.
Where's that? Sorry?
Chapter 19, verse 1. Because the one I said, this third missionary journey included the years 52 to 57.
I don't have dates from. I have 52 to 57.
Now,
So
chapter 19, verse 1. He's in Ephesus from 52 to 55. Remember, because he stays there at least 2 years.
Yeah.
So, 52. I don't know why there's more than 2 years there. I'm just trusting them.
Yeah, 52.
So this is this whole season. So the verse 10 is, they believe, AD 53 to 55. That's where.
So do you put that in there as well?
If you want, it's in the verse 1 if you want.
AD 50.
53 to 55. Yeah, I'm just going on there. You come down to chapter 20, verse 1.
I'll say 1910, we're saying that's 53 to 55.
Yeah. And then in chapter 20, verse 1. After the uproar had ceased, Paul sent for the disciples, and they decided, well, we'll go to Macedonia. That's AD 55 to 56.
Like, both or one?
Yeah, 55-56. So they're sort of through that time.
Yeah.
They can't be exact.
Yep, that's right.
And at that point, he writes 2 Corinthians.
Okay.
So verse 1, he writes 2 Corinthians at that time. So like whole years pass here, and there's no. Just when he'd gone through those districts,
Yeah.
doesn't.
Wow.
You said just presume. Well, nothing much happened. No, just
A lot.
Yeah, we just can't. And verse 3 is AD 57.
Of 20.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got, like I said, we've gone 2 years just in those 3 verses.
Yeah.
AD
Wow.
57. And also, at that point, he writes Romans.
Well, it says then he spent 3 months.
Yeah. And that's when he writes Romans. So if we go from AD 55 to AD 57 in 3 verses. Chapter 21 is AD 57. I'd put those in just as time stamps.
Yeah.
They're still the same. AD 57. Chapter verse 16 of chapter 21. Or verse 17. So when they go to Jerusalem.
80.
AD
Where is?
57.
Where's that?
Chapter 21, verse 1. I've just said AD 57. And verse 17, AD 57, just to sort of show it's still the same.
Yeah.
Verse 27, AD 57. So it's remember, 3 years,
Yeah.
in 2 years and 3 verses, or whatever it was. It's all just.
So what was that last one? 27 was.
Yeah, verse 27. Yeah, so this is all just having AD 57.
Yeah.
Quite a year.
All right.
Could that even be things like
Chapter 23,
Like,
verse 23.
with that?
Yeah.
Could that be things like if Luke wasn't with him?
Yeah,
Luke wasn't with him from AD 53 to 55, so he's not. Whereas he was with him all of 50. So he's just he mentions things where he was there for those events, whereas he wasn't for
that
others.
would be an interesting study to notify whenever he said us and they.
And
Yeah.
whether or not there's more detail or less detail.
I'm guessing there was people who studied that heavily.
Yeah.
Verse 23, AD 57.
20, what's 22? 22 is just 57?
Yeah, so we'll just, I didn't bother to mark that. It's just AD 57. You can,
23.
Let's put it at the start of the
23.
chapters if I can.
Yeah, chapter 23 is AD
What's
57.
Caesarea? 57.
Yeah, it's all 57.
23 is 57.
Yep, chapter 24 is 57.
What a year.
What a year. What a year. And then verse 27. You ready? Verse 27
Of 24.
of 24.
Chapter 24.
AD 59.
59.
We're just going to skip 58.
Well, you see why?
When 2 years.
Yep, he was kept in prison for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
I feel like that's exactly why I want to do this study.
Yeah.
Right there. That statement there. Because so much happens in AD 57. Okay, get
packed.
Okay, image in of Paul.
Yeah.
Getting the image in of Paul right now. So much happens in the year 57. You would think, okay, my ministry is finally going this is exactly what I'm like. Things are happening.
Spain, I'm on my way.
Things are happening. Like there's a lot happening in that time.
Yep.
Suddenly, he's thrown in prison for 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay? And imagine that for yourself. Everything's fine, and then suddenly you have to take a 2-year hiatus because you're in prison.
It's like Joseph.
Quite literally, you have to shut down everything. And it's just, that helps me more than anything to get a context of what Paul was going through.
Yeah.
You know, he'd been doing so much for so long, for a year, and then suddenly 2 years it would feel wasted.
Yeah.
Is it during this time in prison that he writes the prison epistles?
No, they're not sure.
Okay.
The prison epistles have lots of
Thoughts of
speculation, which because he's in prison so much.
Yeah.
Whether he was in Rome, I think they mainly. Some people do think so. I think so. I don't know for sure.
It's a lot of times he could have written. He was in prison a bit.
Let me just.
It's just awesome seeing how committed he was with all these some setbacks here or prison there, and it's like I got work to do.
Let's go back to chapter 23, verse 11. This is
Verse 11. Yep.
we're still in AD 57. You remember?
Mark that in.
Well, yeah, you can. It's all part of 23, AD 57. Just look what he says in verse 11. But on the night immediately following, the Lord stood at his side and said, "Take courage, for as you've solemnly witnessed in my cause at Jerusalem, so you must witness at Rome also."
Yeah.
AD 57, it's a big year. It's pretty exciting.
We're going to Rome.
We're going to Rome. Finally Rome, and from Rome, I've got my sights set on Spain. God's promised it. God said it. AD...
Verse 12. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul.
Yeah. And you remember now we're talking AD 59.
Yeah.
He gets that at the start.
Yeah.
2 years later, he's in prison.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 25, verse 1, just AD 59. Chapter 20.
What is that?
Yeah, 25.
Yeah.
So now we're 59 because of the 2 years.
Sorry, 25. Where are we starting with that in the timeline?
Chapter 25, verse 1.
27. Verse 27 is AD 59.
So 25 verse 1 is what, sorry?
AD 59.
So we've skipped 2 years. Okay. Now we're into the 59s. Chapter 26 is 59. Chapter 27, verse 1, when they set sail for Italy, is AD 60.
Where's that?
Chapter 27, verse 1. So everything's 59.
26 is 59?
27 is 60. Finally, we're going to Rome.
Paul sails for Rome. That's been like a...
Chapter 20.
Soak this in.
Everything must go all right from here.
Yeah. It will.
So we're AD 60. At some point in here, anywhere, you want just in the margin, they think the letter to the Hebrews was written between 60 and 70. So somewhere in there, Hebrews was written. Not by Paul by his own hand, but...
What time, sorry?
AD 60 to 70. It's just somewhere in the 10-year period there. So sometime after this, for the next 10 years, Hebrews gets written. So, it is, and I sort of lean to this, Hebrews was not written by Paul, but it was written by someone who was writing a sermon of Paul's.
Right.
He was
Writing
writing.
someone that was with him.
Yeah, he was writing Paul's material.
Yeah.
So and so it's sort of Paul's teaching, but through someone else's pen.
Yeah.
So what are we? We're at 60. Everything stays at 60.
Chapter 28, 60.
And I.
Chapter 28, 60.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't marked any more dates, so I'm guessing something. So
I'll just leave it there then.
So in chapter 28,
Yeah.
get a bit of space, because from here I've got AD 62. All these things happen. All right.
Wait, so what are we doing? We're doing a list.
Chapter
of things.
28. Yeah, you can put it at the end if you want. Chapter 20. If you've got space at the end, sometimes.
Not really at the bottom of
I've
my
got a
page.
big space down here. In
Yeah.
28.
Use the big space. All right, just wherever you've got a nice space, you can. Or even somewhere in the margin down there, something right here. So these, I'm going to give you the letters that are written in AD 62.
Yeah.
All right, there's 7 of them.
So where are we putting this? Just 80, 62?
Yeah, so chapter 28's around AD 62.
Mm-hmm.
That.
I put it as 80, 60.
Yeah, I know that could. I don't know. No, it should be still 60. This is AD 62. So
Yeah, I'm just putting 80, 60, 62. Okay.
Yeah, this is sort of happening now.
What is this? Letters?
So these are. First Peter's written. I won't tell you who writes that. You can work out who wrote First Peter. But to be fair, Timothy didn't write First Timothy.
Paul 2 Timothy.
So First Peter gets written. Paul writes Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, and Philemon.
1 Peter.
So this is all sort of the end of the book of Acts.
What were they?
Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, and Philemon.
Is that all in number 2? Sorry.
No, that's 2. Yeah, these are.
What is that?
Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, Philemon. There's 4 more that were written.
Yep.
Luke writes Luke and Acts. And then in AD 62 to 64, so just after these events, Paul is released from prison and writes 1 Timothy and Titus.
Okay.
Oh wow, I just found a whole lot more notes down the bottom of my thing. All right, do you want for completeness?
Wait,
I'll give
what's
them.
it?
Yep, let's give them all to you if you want.
What is release from prison? And what does he write?
Writes First Timothy and Titus.
Yep.
Okay.
From AD 64 to 67, so you're going to need some more space. I need to change the next page if you want.
That's supposed to be the chapter theme.
Or you can just, you just, I've got this.
What is it?
I found when all the other letters were written.
Wait, what is all that stuff?
How the word judgment is used.
Okay, nice.
So that's something.
Separate.
Difference between a judge. The term judge is different to our understanding of judge. That's an interesting study.
Okay.
AD 64 to 67, these 1, 2, 3 things are written. For 2 Peter, Jude, and 2 Timothy.
Wait, so where are we putting this?
AD 64 to 67.
I was going to use here.
Yeah.
Second Peter.
2 Peter, Jude, and 2 Timothy. And then 2 other key things happen. Paul and Peter are both martyred in Rome. Well, I've got Paul and Peter martyred in Rome. I assume that both martyred in Rome. At least Peter is. I didn't do very well with my commas and semicolons before. Bunch them together.
It's all martyred.
M-A-R-T-Y-R.
Yeah, I think
Martyred.
it is. Yeah, I think it is.
E-D.
Yeah, I think I've spelled it wrong. I was going to say how I spelled it.
Well, I think I could be wrong. I'm not.
What is it?
M-A-R-T-Y-R-E-D.
I did M-A-T-Y-R-E-D.
You know, go with your dad.
No.
I'm Googling it.
Yeah.
Don't trust either of you.
I actually don't. Yeah, anyway.
Spell. I could have easily spelled it wrong. No, you're right, Josh.
Well, of course I was right. I mean,
Yeah,
I knew it. No, I didn't.
You bailed early.
In Rome. There we are.
I did bail early.
Nice.
Okay, chapter AD 67.
I'm out of space. What happens in 67?
John goes to Ephesus with Mary,
Yeah.
and AD 85 to 95. John writes 1, 2, 3. John and
Revelation.
and the book of John.
What about Revelation?
I don't know. I'm going to guess at the end of some of that.
I thought it was before.
I don't have a
last
date.
two,
I don't have a date for it.
What was the
'Cause
last
it's
two books that he wrote? Sorry, in 67.
Okay.
He goes to Ephesus with Mary, and he writes what?
No, and then in 85 to 95,
Okay.
so quite a bit later,
Yeah.
He's
Quite a
67.
bit later. Yeah.
you get 1, 2, and 3 John, and then the letter to the Gospel of John.
Have we said Ephesus?
1,
Is
2.
it IS or US? Duh.
US, Ephesus.
Yes.
And then in AD...
In 95, he writes 1, 2, and 3 John, and also
85 to 95, somewhere in that 10-year period,
yeah,
he writes 1, 2, and 3
or
John.
85 to 95.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And, well, in 89 to 95, he writes the Gospel of John. I don't know,
Okay. Yeah.
but it's in that same 10-year period. I don't know when the book of Revelation, I tried to find out whether it was written before or after his letters. It's most people, it just seems he did it at the end because it was the last book. But
Well, that's when he was. Does it mention when he was exiled to Patmos?
I put
what
Rev
year?
in there. I put Revelation in there with a question mark.
yeah, Revelation sometime around, probably at the end around there. But there is a chance he wrote it before the letters, but don't know.
Nice.
So all that gives you sort of a feel. So next week we're going to come back and look at the letters to Thessalonica that Paul wrote, Thessalonica, Thessalonians, and match those with what happened in Acts.
Yeah.
All right. So now you'll read the letters through the lens of the framework of Acts.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's good.
All right, so now so that too, and you've got to keep that imagination going of how he left them. It's been a whirlwind. Berea, kicked out of Berea, down to Athens. He has some success sort of in Athens, but then down to Corinth. They come down and join him all the time. Now, by the time Silas and Timothy join him, it's been months.
Yeah.
I have to guess months.
Yeah.
They were left in Berea, not in Thessalonica. He's like, is there even a church?
Yeah.
They were under heavy persecution. We only just got things started. There's a lot of ways for a church to be destroyed. One is people just give up to persecution and say, well, okay, I'll go back. The other way is for error to come into the church.
Yeah.
Or, like with the Galatian, they came in. Or you can have another way, which is immorality and stuff. Is like the church is no different to the world.
Yeah.
In which case,
It's not really a church.
How? So this is not quite on that topic. Just a curious thing for me. Curiosity. How does it know when the Jews that were following him? Do we know when that stopped?
persecuting him.
Yeah, because they were following. Oh,
Well,
no,
well-
that was much earlier, actually, wasn't it?
No, they went from
They followed him to
they
Berea.
went, the Thessalonian church, the Thessalonian Jews persecuted him,
Yeah.
followed him to Berea.
Okay.
Did they go to Athens?
Well, Berea was from Berea to Athens was a long way by ship,
Yeah,
and so that would probably be a bit of a circuit
because
breaker.
maybe he's also like, they're following me. You stay here.
Yeah, you
I'll
guys.
take the heat.
No. I would guess that because Berea was close.
Yeah,
that was why.
They would have stayed in Berea.
Got them to be close by. Yeah.
And once they chased him off, they might have gone back.
Yeah.
So you got to get that in your head, and then we'll.
Because they weren't the same ones that weren't going to eat until.
No,
No,
that
that
was
was
later. That was later in
That's
Jerusalem.
20.
Oh,
Seven?
that's
Is
later
that
in
20?
Jerusalem,
No.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a bit
21?
later.
A bit later.
After his third missionary journey.
Not
so-
those ones. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So no, this is just Jews that are just mad.
Acts 23 verse 12.
Yeah. So we get this picture of movement and chasing and pursuing, but he's not. This is what I want you to get in your heart. He's not trying to evangelize in terms of just get people saved.
He's trying to set up the church.
He's trying to establish
Yeah.
people as believers.
That's
and
good.
you know, like there's no get people saved. That's it. No, if you're saved, you become the church, and it's the
Yeah.
church we've got to get established and in the Word. And there's all sorts of things that are pressing, and I'm doing it from a distance, and I'm doing it from. I'm having to go down and work because I've got no money, so I'm having to work here. All sorts of pressures, and then this doesn't happen today. It only happened in Bible times. That people would come and say things about you that are not true. They would make up things about you, and they would say things like, "Oh, Paul was just in it for the money," and you're not there to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you know. So all these people come in, and you're sort of you're distant. You can't even get on Zoom, and
Yeah.
so you're sort of. So that's the. Did I tell you when Thessalonians was written? Yeah, I think I
Yes,
did.
you did. It
Yeah,
was
chapter 18.
18.
Okay, so you can see how soon that was.
While he's in Corinth.
Yeah, so in Corinth, not long afterwards, he writes.
Which Corinth is near Athens. Down south of Macedonia.
Yeah, down in Greece,
Yeah.
the south part. Yeah, so it's quick. This is very quick.
Yeah.
It's quicker even than the Galatians one almost. You know what I mean? Like it just come down and then he's writing back to there. Why was he writing? What was he doing? What's his heartbeat? And in that you capture his idea, his vision for new Christians. All right, he gets a vision for what people will become and should become, and what he's fighting for, and what he's concerned that they will move away from. That gives you an idea of what to fight for, and what your aim is.
Because if Paul thought it was good, we should also think
It's good. All right, so next week we will unpack Thessalonians so that we can get in this context a feel for it, but in doing that, you get a feel for Bayswater. You get a feel for our region. You get a feel for the cities of Australia. What God wants us to do.
I like that.
All right.
That's so good.
So
I feel like
that was cool.
that was one of my favorite academies. It's so different, but like that's so useful. Like it's giving me so much context to everything, and it's so nice having it in there, and doing it together as a group is so much more fun for something like that.
And it's so cool, like, as we've been saying. It's not just like we're not just getting like nice or cool information, or it's not an add-on. It's like it actually goes.
It's foundational.
It's foundation for what is happening, what he's going through, what he's wanting to do, trying to do, what's happening, and you can see all of this going on. And so it's so cool to it changes now how we're going to read that.
Yeah.
How like forever when we read through this.
Does your Bible do it where like every once in a while
really
it will
cool.
highlight or bolden a verse number?
yes.
What does that?
That means they believe a new paragraph is starting.
Okay.
Because in here the same. Each verse is given as an individual paragraph.
Oh, of course, but whereas in ones where they okay.
But in reality, these would have been grouped together.
Well, in a lot of Bibles, when you read it, they're grouped together. It's just,
and the verse numbers, like if you've got a Bible that has like verse 1 here and then verse 2 there, and verse 3 there, then it's already paragraphed. If you've got a Bible like the ESV or My New American, each line is its own paragraph, which confuses you too. But do you understand that paragraphs weren't actually
a thing
anyway?
Yeah.
That's man's grouping.
Yeah.
All right, that's what the bold means. They think a new paragraph is starting.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That was so. That was. I really hope you were at home able to go through with a Bible and a pen and follow along with what we're doing, because it was so useful and helpful to us.
And doing it by video, you can stop and start us whenever you need to sharpen.
Exactly.
Whenever you need to sharpen your blue pencil, just press pause. You can get in there.
Well, thankfully, also pretty much every time, either Jay or myself said, "Wait, what was that last one you just said?"
We slowed you down for a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, that's true. You're doing it at the pace of someone who had to find it and was getting distracted by pencils breaking.
You're doing
and
it twice sometimes.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to spell Martin and all other fun things, and couldn't hold onto the green pencil. We dropped it about 6 times, I reckon, between the two of us.
But
I didn't drop anything.
It was sitting between the two of us. I was the one dropping it, but it fell.
But you get the
between us.
feeling Acts is like the framework.
Yeah.
All these things. And I was just looking when Philippians was written. Right, we said. Remember that was AD 62, right at the end, he
Yeah.
writes his letter to Philippians. Now, he'd been to the Philippians and established that church before
That
Thessalonica.
was the first missionary
Yeah.
journey. No, it was
But
second journey, but it was
Yes, but he doesn't write to them for like another 5 years or whatever. Actually, no, when
It's so cool.
49 to 62. So he writes to them 13 years later. All right. So why did he feel the need to write to the Thessalonians so quickly?
Yeah.
That's why.
That's the context you're getting
That's
out
the
of this.
context we're getting out of this and why we're reading it. And it's a really how he starts the letter to the Thessalonians is different to how he starts the other letters. The emphasis and his introduction is very different. So I won't start.
I'm excited. It's going to be good. Make sure you're here next Friday as we dive deeper into it. Thank you to everyone who joined us. To Mark, to Judith, to Teresa, to Richard, to Pastor Christian, to Joe, and to Sheba, to Lee, to Brooke, to I'm sure there's other names in there I've missed as well as I'm trying to scroll on
Our
this.
heads have just been looking.
Yeah, I've just been looking out of the Bible the whole time.
Everybody's here.
To everyone who's joined us, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, this Sunday we have a very special Sunday service. You'll hear more about what's going on Sunday. We're really excited for it. Be there in person or online. This week is life groups, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, life groups. So this Wednesday night, join us at life groups. If you don't know what life groups are, it's places where you can take the things you're learning in this academy and you can discuss it with friends. You can discuss it with people. You can dive deeper into it. You can, you can figure things out in a group. That's what it's a place where people can come together and just discuss life through the Bible and through those things. So anything you're learning
would the
here...
Apostle Paul have recommended life groups? We don't answer that. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah, I like that.
Have a think about it, yeah.
If you want to know more about it, go to that website, www.breakthrough.org.au. You can find out all about life groups. You can find a life group that best suits you. Thursday night, we have Alpha. Alpha started last night.
Listen, if you say, I really should have signed up, give me a call. I can give you some copies of links.
You can easily
get you sort of up and
Alpha
running.
is smart, and they made it that you can still join after week 2. You're
up to week 2.
Up to week 2. You can join up to week 2. So you've still got a few days if you want to join Alpha. We highly recommend it. And next Friday, we'll be back to learn more about the Thessalonica Church, learn whether or not Paul would have liked life groups, and have a lot of fun doing so. But on behalf of myself, Josh, Pastor Peter, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bless you.